Welcome everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to come. I know that some people even had to take a day off work so that they were allowed to come to this public sector collaborative event. So we're very touched and delighted to have you here. It's definitely not the only or first standards project that the local public sector has had. I know that LGA in particular have done loads of work in this space. UPRN, which started off at LGA and is now kind of governed, I suppose, by GeoPlace, the unique property reference number, has already demonstrated massive savings for the local public sector, and it's also improved services and local authorities' ability to join up services. But this project, I think, is a world first. We keep saying this, and I will keep saying it until people correct me, in that it is the only that I know of to try and look at an entire local service from end to end, identify the information flow problems across that service, and design a way that all of the many, the varied authority, the various organizations, hundreds of organizations that run this service could try and solve those problems collectively and more consistently. So today is a big day for us. It's the final showcase. Today's kind of our last landmark. We're not supposed to be developing more standards after today. This is our beta showcase, and then from now on we're going to be trying to package our learning and making sure that the project, if there is a will in the sector, has a chance of being developed and going forward. Just a bit of context. If you can see it, it's kind of supposed to be misty and unclear, so it works that the lighting is so bleached out. The future of collaborative local authority digital transformation is quite uncertain at the moment. It's an exciting time. We started this project under a different administration. The government has changed since, and their focus is very much on devolution, localism, and therefore our programme is actually closing on the 31st of March. And so it remains to be seen what collection of local organisations or where else in central government maybe work like this will be picked up. So that's just a little flag. So today, and against the backdrop of exciting unknownness, we are going to try and present everything that we've done to date, give you a sense of what we've done on the business case, on the technical standards, and other assets that we've created that we think you or the sector will benefit from. And in light of the uncertain future, get a sense. We've been thinking a lot about how the project could be scaled up and rolled out nationally, but without the resource to do that ourselves, we'd be mad to waste this opportunity to solicit your feedback. So to the extent that you have ideas about how your organisations could support, get involved, queries that you have, we want to harvest as much of that as possible so that when we're finalising our next steps plans, we've factored it in. And then just to set the tone for the day, I don't know if you can see that, but that's a bum, Superman underwear. And I kind of wanted to make 2 points with this. One is that we want to be as exposed as possible. We want to try and work out loud. That's the mission of this project, because if we don't share what we've failed at, what we've succeeded at, then the sector is none the wiser. And secondly, just to highlight that I think it's become ever more clear to me that in the local public sector there's still a bit of mallet to be bridged between the people with the technical know and the people with the business know. And there are going to be times today when even I, being the project lead, I don't fully understand what's going on. This is just part of this journey of bringing together people who understand what technology can do for a service and people who understand what the service needs are. So brace yourself to not understand absolutely everything, but we hope that we've presented it in a sufficiently accessible way. Yes, I'll leave it at that. So the plan for the day, we're going to try, as I said, to update you on how far we've come. I'll do a very brief project intro and what we're trying to achieve, what we mean by standards, some of the stuff that we've delivered, and then I'm going to hand over to Sarah Prog, who's been leading on our business case in particular, and she's going to update you on how she has incorporated all the feedback we got at our last showcase and developed the business case to be more accurate and hopefully more useful to individual local authorities. And then Paul, the pièce de résistance, something like that, is going to come up and show us how far he's progressed technically. And he's going to demonstrate some of the standards in action with 2 supplier systems, I suppose, or infrastructures, one with Bartech, the other with Whitespace. And then finally, our star children, Luton Borough Council, are going to come up and present a demo of how they're going to use the standard at their local authority. in a live service. So that's going to be the highlight of the day, I think. And then after that, after showing you how great we are, that's when we really start getting naked. We're going to have a break. We're going to have a little panel discussion with all of the partner local authorities that we could get. Unfortunately, two have had to pull out at the last minute today due to injury and illness, respectively. But that'll be an opportunity to ask our partner authorities why they thought they could integrate. How was it so difficult for all to integrate? We only ever promised one integration, so we're kind of on target, but I think all of our partner authorities would have hoped to be able to integrate, and they've learned some really interesting lessons along the way of how difficult it can be to align all of the different stars you need to align to change the way your organisation delivers a service. So that'll be the first bit for feedback, and then we're going to have an open space discussion period, 45 minutes, where anyone who has an idea of a problem that they have with their service, with an initiative that they're trying to push, anything that's on your mind that you think you could benefit from discussing with the people in this room, you can propose. There'll be a sheet at the back to propose your idea. So when we're having lunch, do get thinking about open space topics you might want to discuss. And then in parallel, Sarah will be in one breakout room discussing how we might be able to offer better guidance for people going through procurement. So it's especially, what parts of the contract are very messy at the moment, where do people struggle, where do people lock themselves into bad situations. Paul will be in another room discussing the tech, so if you've any questions about how his standard could work for your company, for your organisation, then go there. And then I'll be in another room. There's it's kind of an unstructured session. Show up, ask questions about local government collaboration, about what's next for this project, and we will discuss freely and openly. And you're able to move between sessions. So we figured last time I think we had too many people to manage tight discussion groups or tight workshop groups. So this time we're going to just have a flexible space for 45 minutes. And the last part of the day then, after coffee, will be kind of discussing what might happen next, and then we'll have our closing panel, which will hopefully represent some of the great and the good in the local digital service transformation space, and those who were leading in waste management. So, and then finally, the most important part is we're going to celebrate the fact that we did stuff and met our deadline just about. So there'll be a wine reception from 4 to 5. So we hope you can all stay for that, and anyone who wants to stay on afterwards, Henry's booked a slot in a local pub. So, just take a drink because my voice is quickly disappearing. Has anyone not come to one of these events before? That's amazing, check it out. Okay, well then I'm vindicated for putting in my project objectives slide. Sorry for everyone who's come to these events before, you must be bored to death if you can read it. But I just wanted to remind people of what we set out to achieve when we started this project. So the project only started in April last year. We got funding. We got a teensy bit of underspend from the waste policy team to the tune of £105,000. So that topped up with some staff time that we already had internally, brought the whole budget to less than, I think, 170, working out loud. And it's been running really in earnest since May. So we started figuring out how we could get partner authorities on board in April, and we started discovery sessions in May. And over that April period, we designed a project to test if local government could collaborate and try and design a way for them to collaboratively agree on data standards in this case. There are rumours going around that local government doesn't really like to collaborate, and that each local authority likes to be unique. Special snowflakes is a term that GDS often use for this phenomenon. And really, in a few years of working in this space, I just have not found that to be the case. People have their own bespoke circumstance. They're locked into contracts. But I've never met somebody who sees the possibility of getting a cheaper, good, well-designed product elsewhere and not wanting to adapt to it. That's my own. So I'm biasing it from the get-go. I think we've tested that local government can collaborate. We've tried to map out a mechanism for collaboration. The second objective was to see if we could produce some standards, and I'll go into a little bit more detail as to what we mean by that, as will every subsequent speaker, I think, so it'll be a motif throughout the day. And given that, so this, from our point of view, we're interested in local public service transformation and in figuring out how local authorities could solve common problems once. So common capabilities, common APIs, common standards are our bag. And when local authorities, actually at local GovCamps, so this is very much a project that emerged from the sector, when they were talking about how great it would be if they could agree some standards and they didn't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater when they wanted to buy a new product, they chose waste management as their first port of call. So we're following suit and focusing on waste initially, but with the hope that the lessons learned on waste management could be extrapolated and applied to other services. Really importantly, we wanted to implement quickly. That means not making a beautiful standard on paper or maybe on GitHub, but we wanted to try and test what we were coming up with as an agreed common way forward in some local authorities with some suppliers. And then finally, and this is increasingly the most important element of this project, is to communicate why we're doing it and how we're doing it. And I've got some stats as to how useful that's been. But essentially, as a standards project, if we don't talk really transparently about how we're doing it and what we're doing, we're not going to get all the people on board that we need to adopt the standard. And that kind of harks back to working in the open as well and sharing our failures and our successes so that others can learn from. Just a quick reminder of what we mean by standards. I think we've learned over the last few sessions that people get the warning bells sound when we say, waste service standards. It sounds like we're trying to standardise how every local authority delivers waste services. Actually, that's definitely not what we meant. We are not in the business of building a common service that everyone plugs into. We're not in the business of specifying how local authorities' processes work, what bins they use, what colours they are, even though some people might think that it would be a good idea to have a bit more consistency in that space. We're in the business of, I think the most accurate term is data protocol, some very, very rudimentary rules of how our, I suppose, IT is structured. That means agreeing basic terminology and hierarchical data structures. I'm going to pass over to Paul to go into more detail on that, but the idea is that we build some, to use Sarah's phrase, building blocks, some very, very low-level rules that will enable suppliers, councils and others to build services on top of them that speak to each other. So our end goal, I think, is the next slide, is to build some common building blocks that allow everyone involved in this case, waste management, to build their services in such a way that they're interoperable. And the benefit, we hope, of enabling systems to speak with a common standard is that you won't just realise the benefits of channel shift, of end-to-end digital services in your local authority, but you enable the supplier market to innovate with kind of a national market rather than just a local one. So, brief reminder, this is what our project roadmap looked like when we started. I think I've just slightly tweaked it on the basis that today is really the end of our beta phase, so we did a discovery alpha beta to follow GDS's lead in agile project development. Discovery identified some problems. Where was information not flowing efficiently? Where were people rekeying and wasting a lot of time? And then we prioritised a very high value problem, which in the case of our 5 partner authorities happened to be missed collections. Alpha, we aim to build some stuff. So build some of these basic data protocols, rules, taxonomies, and a data model that would improve the passing of information through waste management services around missed bins. We did a show and tell, and we also started building a business case to help communicate the value of standards, which hasn't always been the easiest, as Sarah will say. And then we're just at the end of our beta phase, which is having figured out what we should do, tried to build it, we're now trying to implement it. And so we're going to showcase how far we've gone on that front. And this is, I think, a little squashed ending. This is how all projects go, I think. You realise, oh my God, there's all this extra stuff to do at the end, and I only have a month and a half left. So we're in our final phase now, which I think is increasingly focused on evaluating our impact and really trying to make a solid legacy for the sector going forward. As I said, we won't be around from March 31st, so we're being extra militant about packaging our learnings, our business case. We're going to make a final kind of documentary, super exciting video to communicate what we've achieved, how we've done it, because we think that that might be a very easily accessible legacy for whatever group takes the project forward. And we'd also like your feedback. If there's something that you think would be particularly useful, you're planning on working with a number of local authorities in the future, you've got a big problem that you want to solve collectively, we will be aiming to leave a legacy of tools and a little roadmap for how this project went. So if you think something in particular would be useful, then do let us know. I'm getting to the end now before I hand over to Sarah, but this is our original to-do list. So after our discovery phase, when we prioritised what we were going to do, we decided we were going to try and build a taxonomy of reasons for missed collections. We were going to build an API, an application programming interface, that was more an example of the standard, the rules in action. We needed a business case, which we've done. We wanted to try and agree some key performance indicators because it wasn't, there was no obvious way of comparing different local authorities' processes, who was doing a better job, who was operating a more efficient service. We thought some standard contract clauses would have been useful because procurement is a big problem, and when people go to procure, they've generally not done it for a few years. And so we thought maybe some standard contract clauses would have been helpful. And then finally, as I mentioned, we wanted to document our process because we really hope that this could be a project that is applicable to other services in the future. It being an agile project and us learning as we go, we have tweaked what we think the best building blocks to leave you with will be. So Paul's actually worked on more taxonomies than just the reasons for miscollection, and some of them he's drawn on RAP data for, but they're all the first, I think, collated list of taxonomies, and I believe that some suppliers have already started to use them and test them, so they're there and they're all on a GitHub page. He's built an API, we're going to go back to that later. We've decided to make a lot more effort to get to the bottom of the business case, so we'll actually end up having 3 iterations rather than 1, too far. We've backed away from the key performance indicator issue to reprioritize fixing that business case. I think we need the business case right before we start getting into what the key performance indicators will be. Hopefully that will fall out of business case work, so that hasn't been as priority as we initially thought. Standard contract clauses, I think Sarah and I have spoken about this, and Sarah's done a lot more thinking about it than me. We think it's probably not the right solution to give you some clauses that you drop into your contract. Rather, we might need something that's a bit more flexible guidance as to what you should be demanding of your contracts and how you build in more flexibility rather than, very, very rigid contract clauses. But again, we're at the very beginning of that process, so do feedback in Sarah's session in particular. And then finally, we will be making an effort to document our process. I'm just going to flag 1 or 2 useful resources. When we finished our discovery event, we did try to map out all of the potential information flow problems, all of the areas where standards could help. And that spreadsheet is on our resources page. It's called the EPIC spreadsheet. EPIC just being kind of a high-level theme, a need theme. We have a project page, which you've probably all come across if you're here. But this is our manifestation of working out loud. It's got our intro video. It's got our project timeline there on the right, so you can see exactly what we're aiming to achieve by when. And you can also see the working out loud blog, so lessons learned, what the hell is an API and a taxonomy, etc. And then some stats. This is just like a little pointer, and I'll come back to it later. Working out loud has been insanely valuable because you're all here. We've engaged with 77 councils in some meaningful way. So while we have probably every local authority in the UK represented in some way through a mailing list or other, we have had email correspondence, meetings, integration planning, or they've been to an event. So 77 councils from across the UK, that includes Scottish councils and Welsh. We've engaged with 30 suppliers, which I think is our weakest area, but this is very much a local public sector project that wanted to establish the needs of local authorities before approaching suppliers. But for a phase 2, for rolling this out, we're going to need to do a lot more engagement with suppliers. And then finally, we've engaged with 22 networks, representative bodies, the likes of CIWM, ESA, iStand UK, and others. That's our GitHub page. Paul's going to talk about that, and our business case. And without further ado, I will hand you over to Sarah Prog, who has led on building our financial model and done a whole lot of work in helping us to plan this project. So over to Sarah.